I'm broadcasting to you from my truck. And this won't be the only time that I'll be broadcasting from my truck. As of late, I've been spending a lot of time in my truck. And I'll go into that at a later episode. For now, I want to talk about random stuff and see if I can string together a narrative, which of course the human mind is really good at doing. And the narrative may or may not be actually correct in the big scheme of things when you really look at it. But who gives a crap about that nowadays? Let's see if it's fun. Let's see if it's entertaining to you guys. So, top of mind for me right now is what the hell happened in Maui? Like, it's crazy. If you look at some of the videos that were being released online, whether it's xxtwitter.com or um, whether it's on YouTube or TikTok or Instagram, there was a lot of videos being posted by people on the ground, and I'll tell you what, it just looks really, really spooky. Explosives, explosions, things so powerful going on that it's like a wildfire. You doubt it, you doubt everything that we've seen growing up online, all the doubt that is created online. It makes you wonder. And so you see these videos and it just looks like spooky. I don't know how else to put it. It just looks really spooky. So some people have said that it wasn't a wildfire, naturally, right? Anything that happens on the news, people are going to question it. So what have they said it is? They said it's directed energy weapons, which scientifically is a valid thing, and it's a real thing that has been talked about by certain people on certain podcasts, and there's certainly a lot of books about it, and declassified documents discussing the technology in theoretical and practical terms. So it's a possibility, and it's kind of scary to think about, but there it is. The other thing is, which seems like a very Occam's razor explanation, and probabilistically probably the explanation, faulty power lines, which should have been retrofitted by the utility company there, which I believe is called Hawaii Electric, and lack of oversight by local authorities. Those two things combined, together with an event caused by Mother Nature going mad for a little bit, seems like a valid explanation. There's a cat here now near my truck. He was hiding because there was a rainstorm earlier. A black and gray cat. Interesting. Outdoor cats. Anyways, so those are the explanations that people have. The conspiracy one, directed energy weapons, they let it happen, blah, 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 blah. There's a lot of billionaires in Hawaii. What are all these poor people doing on my beautiful paradise island? I paid $100 million for this house. All these poor people are here. Not only poor people, but there's these fucking native Hawaiians. God damn it. What are they doing here? They're the squatters that never left. They're never going to leave. How do we get rid of them? How do we move them out? This and that. They're never going to buy into our little system. They're sensible, normal, natural. They just enjoy the good life. They lucked out. Fuck them. We want their land. Boom, the billionaire's direct energy weapon. Knock out this old area of Maui and the Hawaiian Islands with a lot of history. So the area that was hit, called, I believe, Lahaina, is the old seat of the Hawaiian kingdom that was famously ruled over by King Kamehameha and his descendants. And there's an old banyan tree that symbolizes that old Hawaiian kingdom. And so it has a lot of history, and in particular has a lot of history for the indigenous people that have lived there probably for centuries. So it's a little bit spooky and it's a little bit gross, and it's very, very sad because hundreds of people are probably going to be announced dead. Over 100 are dead already, confirmed, and there's over 1,000 missing. And it's looking like the response was pretty bad during the crisis and the emergency. The sirens didn't go off. The emergency services weren't deployed. And the police chief in charge has a very colored history. So, according to some sources, like the PBD podcast and others, this sheriff was the sheriff of Las Vegas when there was that famous shooting at that country concert, which is a whole nother rabbit hole I don't want to go into. But so there's that connection that people ought to look into and put it for or against whether or not there was fuckery afoot in Hawaii. My take on it is odds are somebody wanted to clear up that prime real estate. That's just putting myself in the shoes of the rich and powerful, and as someone who's a tyrant, I could see it being a real estate tactic. And I don't really put a moral judgment on it one way or the other. It's obviously really tragic, but when you put yourself in the mindset of these elites, like, I don't know, anything seems possible. They just seem to be operating on another level where the morality that gets pumped into the lower classes is not applicable to them. I mean, look at Epstein Island. Like, there's a grand superiority complex. And I don't want to get into the whole deep spirituality and duality and religious mystery of good and evil and morality and what's right or wrong. but anything's possible. Anything's possible when it comes to human beings, the good and the bad, the light and the dark. And it looks like a lot of people that lost their homes and family members are now being pressured by real estate maniacs to sell their land, probably for pennies on the dollar, and it just reeks, and it just reminds me of the rotten deals that have been made by indigenous groups with Europeans, and it just doesn't look good. It just looks my honest gut reaction when I saw the story and when I started watching clips of the fire, taken from a distance and taken from a pier, my gut reaction was like, oh, this was like sort of set up, sort of created. This circumstance was created, and my gut reaction was that it's like, oh, here we go. Like they're just sort of attacking this indigenous area, mixed area, commercial, with a lot of indigenous roots and old families that are frankly probably poor and probably what they would be construed as lazy in the European capitalist mindset and construed as a hindrance to growth and development, i.e., high rise condominiums. And it's going to be very, very, very telling, my gut reaction, to see what they put there. So if my gut reaction is correct, then these indigenous families will either be paid off or bullied and just get out of here. And what they'll do is they'll put up high rises and a bunch of fancy stuff there for high, high, high net worth individuals to have um, fancy shopping, fancy restaurants, and even fancier than what was there before. And then uh, fancy condominium towers and all that jazz. Some kind of bar scene. But my gut reaction will be proved right if ultimately they build those kind of things on there, and it'll be wrong if they just reimburse all these families and make them whole, and then they rebuild their community. It'll be very, very telling to see. And I think a lot of it's going to be based on the resilience of that community, to see what they're going to do and how they're going to build and all that stuff. Switching gears now from Hawaii spookiness. The other thing that I've been really diving into lately has been the primary race on the Republican side. And I know politics is probably cliche and it's probably at this point boring, and I'm kind of getting bored of it after having followed it on and off throughout my life. But I've been following it. I've been interested in this Vivek Ramaswamy guy. My quick take on the whole Republican primary: it's like it basically looks like it's a race for second right now. It's a race to beat Trump's VP unless he gets indicted. I mean, indicted, excuse me, convicted and locked up and pretty much operationally taken out of the election. Even if he does get elected, they're gonna say it's impossible for you to serve your term because you're in prison. So, it's just like, short of that momentous event happening, it's a race for second between DeSantis and, right now, it looks like Vivek Ramaswamy, who is, from what I've seen looking at him, looks like a really intelligent guy, really, really ambitious guy, really, really cunning guy. And really spooky in the good way because of that Indian and Hindu background. Like they have, especially the ones that succeed in the U.S., they have an amazing intellectual capacity, an amazing mental capacity, an amazing ability to perceive. In other words, they're very perspicacious and insightful people. Um, he's long-winded, I would say. Vivek, he's not. He's a little bit all over the place, a little bit um, nervous energy when I see him talk. Um, but he's young. If he was elected, which he won't, but if he was elected president, he would be the youngest president in history. And you know what? That's part of it too, and that's a beautiful thing. He has a lot of energy. He's a young man. He's uh he's not much older than most millennials. He's a late millennial, and he's not much older than Gen Z, than the young people. I mean, he's 20 years older than someone in high school. So that's not that far off. I mean, has a lot of understanding, and a young president wouldn't be such a bad thing coming down the pipe. It won't happen this election, but it would be nice in 2028 to have a young crew going up there instead of all these oldies. Uh, but Vivek, yeah, he looks smart. He looks like he's gone the Trump route of being honest, and since he's rich, he's uh, he's able to do and say what he wants to a large extent. Apparently, he's short of a billion, but that's still pretty good. I mean, when you got 600, $700 million, you you drop the BS, and people are liking that about him. DeSantis, well, he's starting to look more and more like some kind of establishment robot that was Frankenstein together to appear like a kind of milder Trump, you know. Hence the whole Florida gay this and that, and the battle with Disney over gender and a bunch of nonsense, like battles for him to appear to go far right of Trump for this primary, but it's not working. Like people just don't like him. He just seems like an Ivy League elite, boring but nice kind of robot, which probably could have won the presidency in the 90s, but like people have too much swagger now, man. Like there's too much going on. There's too much people have learned and seen, and like character is just a whole nother level now. Like I've been thinking a lot about that lately. Is like the kind of personalities that people have now. It's just like they're so much more dynamic. They're so much more all over the place. So much more um, exciting because of their exposure to the internet, and that means a million things because the internet just blows up. Your exposure to reality, exposure to information, to science, to how to do things, to everything. Like you're not a simpleton, even if you're living in simpleton town. Like you can interact virtually, digitally with the smartest people, the most amazing ideas, etc., etc. So he's like an old school kind of political candidate, and he's all polished up and he's all chosen up, for the spot, right? Like he's got a beautiful family, Ivy League. He's working through the normal channels, lawyer, governor, president, right? But it's like people can see through that, all that BS now, and it's like we're just so much smarter now about the patterns of politics, the patterns of politicians. The wise have always known that politicians are full of shit. I've always known that they're full of shit, and I've accepted them for being full of shit. It's part of the job in the systems that we have set up for government. So it just comes with the territory. But people don't put up with that anymore. Like, I don't see DeSantis getting any momentum unless Trump really messes up, and that's why he doesn't want to go on the debates, because he just doesn't need to go there, because he has nothing to gain. People already see him as an outsider, as a badass, as a whatever. Like, his base sees him as what it is, as an awesome dynamic guy. And so DeSantis, in comparison to that, just looks like boring old times. We don't want to go back to that. I mean, people want something more chill, but they're not as animated as Trump's base. And so this is like a long way of saying that I don't see DeSantis getting enough momentum, busting over 20%, and really threatening Trump. It might get close in Iowa because of a lot of the evangelicals, but over the course of the primary, I think it's going to be Trump, and then a race for second, and I don't think he's going to choose DeSantis now because he's a traitor and blah, 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 all that bullshit. And so it looks like Vivek will be the VP right now. As of right now, it looks like he'd be a good VP, and it would be certainly nice for like minority and all that stuff. But Trump, Vivek looks like a possibility right now. And and I got a little distracted because the two sheriffs, deputies, just drove around where I'm at, which I don't want to say where I'm at, but I'm in an area where there's a lot of, so I gotta really exercise my free speech here. So yeah, I mean, Trump looks good in the polls, but there's people saying now that, and there's reports coming out that he's all stressed out and his health is starting to go down the tubes and blah 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 blah. And it's like, well, what do you expect? I mean, it's not gonna be easy. It's gonna be tough. They're gonna try to put you in jail. His family's giving him all this heat, and he's gonna be brought into court for the fourth time or whatever it is in Georgia on Thursday in what looks like the most dangerous case, because it's like a RICO and it's like really not friendly territory there in Georgia and Atlanta. You got a hostile kind of George Soros DA, and the governor's not your buddy, and he's like another empty suit they put in there, and so it doesn't look good. I mean, he's gonna have to do some, you know, outside the view of the public. He's gonna have to do some black arts, dark arts, tradecraft stuff, to kind of get that whole thing dismissed or win that case or whatever. But they're trying to gas him, trying to get him tired. All these indictments conflict with the election schedule, and ultimately all his cases, though they're federal and state, at least for the federal ones, you know, he has the ability to appeal them to the Supreme Court and have them resolve it. And right now the court will probably be ruling in his favor because he has a lot of justices that he appointed there, and so 5-4, 6-3 most likely, and that would kind of resolve. But the state ones, those wouldn't resolve as easily because it'll be harder to appeal them to the federal system, which I believe you could. I'm not 100% on that, but I believe you could. I believe state cases have gotten to the Supreme Court level. There's no reason why they shouldn't if they don't. So yeah, they could all be bundled up. His cases is what I'm trying to say, and sent to the Supreme Court, and then they'll be dismissed from there, assuming that his guys that he put on the court back him, and assuming they don't get kicked out for bullshit, like Clarence Thomas. They're giving him all this heat because of these lavish trips, which all the justices have always gotten, and the ones that are there now get all kinds of sweetheart deals and trips and all kinds of goodies. It's just like political to go after one of them now because they just want to shift the balance of power on the court, right? It's conservative right now with Roberts defecting a lot of the times to the liberals. So even with that defection, the conservatives still win. So if they got rid of one conservative justice, then that's it. Like it'll flip the other way. It's 5-4 right now on really the most important contentious issues. Um, so it doesn't look really that good for him right now. The most important thing for Trump is, if I'm advising him, one of his strategists, political advisors, I would say the most important thing is to win the election. All these roadblocks are, while necessary to overcome and fight, not necessarily the most important thing. The most important thing is to win the election because it's very likely that you will be convicted in at least one of these courts. Maybe all of them, but at least one of them you'll be convicted, right? And so you get convicted and da 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 da. It's a whole thing, right? Like regardless of how great your defense is, it looks like you're going to be convicted. Obviously, put up a good defense and have trump cards, no pun intended, on the side, whether they be of the dark arts nature or the legal nature. Have your cards, keep them close to your chest, bring them out if you really need to when it looks like things are really dark and you're going to actually be sent to jail. Like to avoid jail, you're going to need to bring out those trump cards at some point, and sort of vanquish your enemies in a very Machiavellian way if you want to get out of these convictions because they want to destroy you. They are playing the game very well, and you got to respect the way they're playing the game. And I think they're great operators, much better than the Trump side, honestly. They're playing to win. They're not playing with their hands tied behind their back, and you could say they're playing dirty, but they're succeeding at sort of keeping their power. So I would say focus on winning the election because you win the election, then you have the American people, then you have all this goodwill, all this political capital, and you have the ability to, if you want, go down that road, right? I don't want to say what that road is, but you have the ability to go down that road because you won the election, and probably a majority of the American people are going to come with you down that road. And so winning the election is paramount. Now, whether or not he can do it and whether or not they're going to let him win, I don't know. I'm going to have to table that and just drop this for now and move on to another topic. So, this other thing that I've been looking at lately is the decay of California. So, I'm going to be making a trip to California in a couple of weeks. I haven't been there in over a year or more. And by all reports, it's deteriorating in many of the grand locations. So, the heart of LA, downtown LA, homelessness, disgusting, dirty, dying, dark, grim, gloomy. San Francisco downtown, the same thing. All that being said, California's still a great state, amazing, beautiful, natural, a lot of great spots, a lot of money, a lot of genius, a lot of creativity, tech, movies. We love it. All that being said, I listened to a podcast interview with Victor Davis Hanson and this guy I don't know, but it's a podcast I think called something California, Reimagining California or Addressing California. I'm not sure. But it's an interview with Victor Davis Hanson, who's a great writer, great historian, professor, has a really good position there at Stanford at the Hoover Institution. I don't know what the heck, I don't know how, given how liberal it all is, but how he's there, but he's there. And he's written from a conservative perspective, from a classical perspective, on all kinds of topics. Very erudite, learned, scholarly kind of guy. He's bald. I don't know if you've seen him. He's bald, and it just looks like his head is just radiating pure knowledge and facts. Like if you just get close to his head and maybe even touch it or lick it or something, you're just gonna get a PhD just by touching it. That's the kind of guy he seems like. I never met him, but that's what he seems like. And so I saw this podcast with him, and he was just railing on California. He was just talking so much trash about California, and it was so funny because it just like was so pessimistic, so nihilistic, and he was just saying how it's gone downhill by every metric you look at, right? And the homelessness is just like the most obvious part of it, but the the most interesting thing for me was that his insight was that the people that run the state, right, like the elites in tech and Hollywood, um, and adjacent industries, they, alongside their politicians, they know that California is very, 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 very much a magnet to people from not just the U.S. but the whole world. And having known that, they thought that if they don't improve the infrastructure, if they don't keep things clean, if they kind of let things get kind of dirty and dingy, that people won't want to come to California. It turns out they're wrong. People still came, and Victor Davis Hanson points this out. He says that um, for people coming from really distressed parts of the world, a California that hasn't been improved since the 1990s is a hell of a lot better than Uzbekistan or Tajikistan or uh, Venezuela or wherever they're coming from in the third world, Africa, which hasn't improved in hundreds of years or whatever it is, right? So, or that is a third world country, or that is civil war, famine. It's way better than where they're from, so they don't care. They can put up with California's ridiculous traffic, ridiculous homelessness, super duper crazy cost of living, um, in part by design, like really high utility rates and um, really high income taxes and insurance costs, and um, you just go down the line, list everything, and it's just like the most expensive in the country. And despite all these red flags for people, they still come, right? And I've been to California. It's awesome. Like it really is awesome. And if you're rich, it's a place to be. It's a place to have a home. It's a place to to live. Really, I mean that ocean, that coastline is like amazing. There's so much you can do. There's so much to see. And even if you never even go into the cities, California is probably the top three states in the nation for natural beauty. You got Yosemite National Park, you got the Redwood National Forest, and you got Monterey Peninsula, Pebble Beach, Kings Canyon, Joshua Tree. It goes on and on. And so it's an amazing state. And I've been thinking about it, and I've been thinking about if I'd like to live there at some point, and it's going to be really interesting to go to LA in this next couple of weeks and see how bad it is, see what's good about it, see where people live, how they live, how it's expanding, the driving situation, which is infamously horrible, and and just the effect that the internet and influencer culture and TikTok and all this has had on LA, which from what I've been told is like it just changed the whole vibe of the city where celebrities are coming from, really, right? Like the decentralization of celebrity is the way I like to think about it. Anybody and everybody can be a celebrity, and they can be from anywhere, and they can live anywhere, and they can do anything, but they can be a celebrity. And that makes me wonder: is like, like a lot of things, right? Like if everybody can do it, then it devalues it, right? So like the competition is on to rise in that influencer hierarchy, and you know, guys are doing so much wacky stuff now to stand out and get pussy. It's amazing, but that's neither here nor there, and I don't want to go into that right now. But I'm gonna have a lot to report about LA when I get back, and have some observations and some stories to tell about it. So yeah, California. Let's see how it is. Moving on from that to more random stuff that I've been just kind of coming across. It certainly looks to me like AI and the internet and all this stuff, it's like really culminating in like such a sea change and like generational change. Like the boomers compared to the millennials compared to like Gen Z, like the lifestyles are, I just feel they're really shifting, and it's exciting because I've for the last few years enjoyed a lifestyle that's kind of like random and nomadic and digital and based on the goodwill of others too, donations and help and stuff like that. And it's it's interesting to see where lifestyles are going because of technology, and I think it's good. It's fun, and it's amazing how people have now learned so many different ways to monetize themselves online. And I have to take a piss, so I'm gonna have to end this for now. Goodbye.